One book, one extraordinary life. 48 chapters of saints, science, and the search for God.
I'm Kai,
And I'm Maya.
and this is our take on Autobiography of a Yogi, chapter by chapter.
August 1935, Wardha, India. A dusty ashram surrounded by green fields. And waiting at the gates is a man most people would call the greatest leader alive, Mahatma Gandhi, the spiritual heart of a nation.
Chapter 44, with Mahatma Gandhi at Wardha. Okay, so Yogananda has just returned to India after 15 years in America. His guru, Sri Yukteswar, called him home. And now, before Yogananda can even get to Serampore, he's traveling to this remote ashram in the center of India to meet Gandhi.
And this is, right, it's remarkable because Yogananda doesn't see Gandhi as a curiosity or a political figure. He sees him as a saint, a man whose consciousness has merged with something vast and whose life has become an instrument for God's will, you know?
The description of Gandhi when they first meet is so physical. Yogananda doesn't get lost in reverence. He's looking at this 100-pound man sitting cross-legged, holding a pen and a scrap of paper, because it's a Monday, his day of silence. So Gandhi can't speak. He just writes, "Welcome."
And Yogananda says the whole thing just radiates health, physical, mental, spiritual. This man has lived under intense pressure. He's battled with the British government. He's fasted multiple times to the point where people thought he was dying. He's been imprisoned. He's endured mockery and violence. And yet, his soft brown eyes shine with intelligence and sincerity. He looks alive.
There's this detail that sticks with me. Gandhi's living at an ashram called Maganvadi, and the guest house they give Yogananda and his companions, super simple. Basic rope beds, a whitewashed kitchen, a well for water, and around them sounds of crows and cattle and chisels chipping stones. That's the world Gandhi has chosen.
Because he took a vow of non-possession decades ago. He renounced this enormous law practice that was making him more than $20,000 a year, distributed it all to the poor. And unlike some renunciates who talk about detachment, Gandhi actually lives it. This isn't performance. This is real sacrifice.
But wait, there's more to it than just simplicity. Mr. Desai, Gandhi's secretary, writes out the 11 satyagraha vows that all of Gandhi's serious followers take, and Yogananda records them: non-violence, truth, non-stealing, celibacy, non-possession, body labor, control of the palate, fearlessness, equal respect for all religions, use of home manufactures, freedom from untouchability. 11 vows held in a spirit of humility.
This is the framework. This is how Gandhi translates spiritual principle into actual living practice. It's not vague or philosophical. It's specific, concrete. Because you can't just say, "I believe in truth." You have to live it. You have to control what you eat. You have to do physical labor. You have to touch the untouchable when your whole culture tells you not to. That's the revolution Gandhi is creating.
So they're taken to lunch 2 hours after arriving, and everyone's sitting under an arcade eating from brass plates, community meal. And there's this beautiful moment where Yogananda describes what Gandhi is eating: chapatis, boiled beets, raw vegetables, oranges, simple food. But on the side of his plate is this bitter paste made from neem leaves, a blood cleanser.
And Gandhi separates a portion and puts it on Yogananda's dish. It's disgusting. Yogananda forces it down. He remembers his mother making him take the same medicine as a child. And then he watches Gandhi eating it, bit by bit, with as much relish as if it was a delicious sweetmeat. You know? That's detachment. That's the ability to use the senses without being controlled by the senses.
It connects to something Gandhi mentions later. He had an appendectomy, and he refused anesthetics, just sat there during the whole surgery chatting cheerfully with his disciples, his mind so detached from the body that he could be joking while a doctor was cutting into him.
That's a teaching that lives inside a story. Yogananda's not explaining detachment as a doctrine. He's just watching Gandhi eat something bitter and recognizing, oh, this is what it looks like when someone's consciousness isn't trapped in the body's preferences.
And then there's Mirabai, Miss Madeline Slade, English Admiral's daughter, and she's working at the ashram doing rural reconstruction. Every morning at 5 o'clock, she and others go to nearby villages and teach simple hygiene. And get this, they clean the villagers' latrines. The villagers are illiterate, so the only education is by example.
Here's the thing. In Yogananda's earlier travels through America, he met many Western seekers. Some of them got it intellectually. They could talk about unity consciousness and all that. But Mirabai did something different. She left everything. She came to India, and she cleans latrines. She's lowered herself below the caste system entirely. She's touched the untouchable. That's not belief. That's embodied commitment.
She tells Yogananda she came to India in 1925 and said, "I feel I've come home." She would never go back to her old life. And that's interesting because Yogananda is going to encounter this again in the next chapter with Anandamoyi Ma. There are these extraordinary women who've renounced everything and are living out the teaching in their own bodies and their own service.
So that afternoon, there's lunch again, and Gandhi's there under the arcade with about 25 satyagrahis, all sitting barefoot. And the menu is communal: chapatis, vegetables, lemon jam. And Yogananda notices that actually, let me back up. Before lunch, Mr. Desai writes out these vows on Mr. Wright's travel diary, and then Gandhi signs the page, gives the date, August 27, 1935. So we know exactly when this happened.
And then the evening, they go up to the roof of the ashram, 30 satyagrahis arranged in a semicircle around Gandhi. He's sitting on a straw mat. There's an old pocket watch propped up in front of him because Gandhi has to apportion his time minutely. The sun is setting over the palms and banyans. The crickets are starting, and they do a solemn chant, a Gita reading. And then Yogananda asks Yogananda to give the concluding prayer.
And Yogananda says the memory of that moment never leaves him. Wardha rooftop meditation under the early stars. That's what he calls it. Not just information about Gandhi, an actual experience of the consciousness present there. That's what these encounters do. They transmit something beyond words.
Then at 8 o'clock, Gandhi breaks his silence. The day of silence is over, and they go to his writing room. This simple space with straw mats on the floor instead of chairs. Low desk with books and papers and ordinary pens. No fountain pens, just an ordinary clock ticking. And there's this all-pervasive aura of peace and devotion.
Gandhi explains his vow of silence. Years ago, he started it as a way to get time for correspondence. Practical reason. But now those 24 hours have become a vital spiritual need. A periodic decree of silence isn't a torture. It's a blessing. And Yogananda agrees wholeheartedly, because at a certain point in meditation practice, silence becomes something you need the way you need food or sleep.
And then Gandhi and Yogananda talk about America and Europe. They discuss world conditions, and then Gandhi suddenly says to Mr. Desai, "Make arrangements at town hall for Swamiji to speak about yoga there tomorrow night." So Yogananda is going to be teaching about yoga to ordinary people in this small town.
And as Yogananda's leaving, Gandhi hands him a bottle of citronella oil and says with a laugh, "The Wardha mosquitoes don't know a thing about ahimsa, Swamiji, nonviolence. Even the mosquitoes aren't practicing it. There's humor there, humility. The saint isn't pretending to be perfect. He's just working with what's real."
The next morning, they breakfast on wheat porridge with molasses and milk. And at 10:30, there's lunch again. Brown rice, new vegetables, cardamom seeds. And Yogananda describes strolling around the ashram grounds afterward and coming to a grazing area where Gandhi keeps some cows, because the protection of cows is a passion with Gandhi.
And this is where Gandhi explains something Yogananda records. The cow to me means the entire subhuman world, extending man's sympathies beyond his own species. Man through the cow is enjoined to realize his identity with all that lives. And Yogananda understands, this isn't just sentiment. This is teaching about consciousness recognizing itself in all forms.
Gandhi says the ancient rishi selected the cow for apotheosis because the cow was the giver of plenty. She gave milk, she made agriculture possible. She's the second mother to millions of mankind. Protection of the cow means protection of the whole dumb creation of God. The appeal of the lower order of creation is all the more forceful because it is speechless.
And then Yogananda reflects on the 3 daily yajnas or rituals enjoined on Orthodox Hindus. Bhuta Yajna, offering of food to the animal kingdom, Pitri Yajna, offering of oblations to ancestors, and Ri Yajna, offering of food to the poor. So the teaching is woven throughout all forms of life. You're acknowledging your bond with the animals beneath you and the ancestors behind you, and your contemporaries around you.
That afternoon, Yogananda visits Gandhi's ashram for little girls. There's a group of tiny girls in long, colorful saris, and Yogananda's giving a talk outdoors in Hindi about yoga, and then suddenly the sky just opens. Sheets of driving rain, tropical intensity, and Yogananda and Mr. Wright are laughing, running to the car, racing back through it all.
But in that moment, he's noticing something else. The poverty, the simplicity, the self-sacrifice everywhere present at the ashram, and he connects it to Sri Yukteswar's teaching about renunciation. Sri Yukteswar used to poke fun at people who claimed to renounce when they'd already lost everything. A beggar can't renounce wealth. If your business fails and your wife leaves you and then you decide to enter a monastery, what worldly sacrifice have you made? The world already renounced you.
But saints like Gandhi are different. They've made tangible material sacrifices. He gave up a law practice that was making huge money. But more than that, he's renounced selfish motive and private goal. He's merged his whole being in the stream of humanity. That's the harder renunciation.
So then at 3 o'clock that afternoon, Yogananda has a scheduled appointment with Gandhi in the writing room, and Yogananda squats beside him on the uncushioned mat, and he asks directly, "Mahatmaji, please tell me your definition of ahimsa, nonviolence."
And Gandhi says, the avoidance of harm to any living creature in thought or deed. Beautiful ideal, Yogananda says, but the world will always ask, may one not kill a cobra to protect a child or oneself? And then Gandhi gives this answer that's so honest, it's stunning. He says, "I could not kill a cobra without violating two of my vows, fearlessness and non-killing. I would rather try inwardly to calm the snake by vibrations of love. I cannot possibly lower my standards to suit my circumstances."
And then he adds with amazing candor, "I must confess that I could not carry on this conversation were I faced by a cobra." Seriously, he's not claiming to be inhuman. He's just saying, this is my commitment. Even when I'm tested, I'm working to live it. The honesty of it is striking.
So they talk about diet. Gandhi's reading Western books on diet because he believes diet is important in the Satyagraha movement. He advocates complete continence for Satyagrahis, so he's always trying to find the best diet for the celibate, because you have to conquer the palate before you can control the procreative instinct. And it's not about starving yourself, it's about finding a rational vegetarian diet with all the necessary vitamins and minerals.
And he says something fascinating. When a Satyagrahi has truly overcome the inner greed for food, they must continue a rational vegetarian diet. And through inward and outward wisdom in regard to eating, the Satyagrahi's sexual fluid is easily turned into vital energy for the whole body. So diet and celibacy and energy work are all connected.
And Yogananda mentions the avocado. He says avocados are excellent high-protein foods. There are groves near his center in California, and Gandhi's face lights up with interest. He wonders if they would grow in Wardha. So Yogananda promises to send some avocado plants from Los Angeles to Wardha.
Then Yogananda asks about eggs. Are unfertilized eggs forbidden to Satyagrahis? And Gandhi laughs because he remembers this story. For years he wouldn't allow eggs. Even now he doesn't eat them personally. But one of his daughters-in-law was dying of malnutrition. Her doctor insisted she needed eggs. And Gandhi wouldn't agree until the doctor explained, unfertilized eggs contain no life sperm. No killing is involved. Then Gandhi gave permission, and his daughter-in-law was restored to health.
So there's rigidity there, but also flexibility. Gandhi has principles, but they're not dogmatic. He's willing to learn, he's willing to adjust when circumstances demand it. That's mature spirituality, not hardness, not unbending rules. Compassion that's intelligent.
And then it's time for the main event. The night before, Gandhi had expressed a wish to receive Kriya Yoga. Yogananda has been initiated into this technique by Sri Yukteswar, and Gandhi wants to learn. So several Satyagrahis come into the writing room, Mr. Desai, Dr. Pingale, and a few others, and Yogananda teaches them.
He first teaches the physical Yogada exercises. The body is visualized as divided into 20 parts. The will directs energy to each section in turn, so everyone's vibrating before him like a human motor. And Yogananda can see the rippling effect on Gandhi's 20 body parts, all exposed to view because he's so thin, but not unpleasingly so. The skin is smooth and unwrinkled.
And then Yogananda initiates the group into the liberating technique of Kriya Yoga itself. So the Mahatma has now received initiation into this yogic science, a meeting of two of India's greatest spiritual figures, not as guru and student, as equals in the recognition of truth.
Because then Gandhi talks about his beliefs. He says he studied all world religions reverently. The Jain scriptures, the biblical New Testament, the writings of Tolstoy. These are the three main sources of his nonviolent convictions, and he articulates his credo. He believes the Bible, the Quran, and the Zendavesta are as divinely inspired as the Vedas.
This is fundamental to what we're seeing. Gandhi's not saying Hinduism is the only truth or Christianity is the only truth. He's saying consciousness expresses itself through all the great traditions. All genuine paths lead to the same truth. And that's one of the 6 core teachings Yogananda emphasizes throughout the book.
Gandhi says he believes in gurus, but that in this age, millions must go without one because it's rare to find a combination of perfect purity and perfect learning. But you don't need to despair of knowing the truth of your religion because the fundamentals of every great religion are unchangeable and easily understood. So whether you're Hindu or Christian or Muslim, the fundamentals are accessible to anyone who looks.
And then he talks about his feeling for Hinduism itself. He says, I can no more describe my feeling for Hinduism than for my own wife. She moves me as no other woman in the world can. Not that she has no faults. She has many more than I see myself. But there's an indissoluble bond. Even so, I feel for Hinduism with all its faults and limitations.
And then he says something that's right at the heart of what the book is teaching. Hinduism is not an exclusive religion. It has room for the worship of all prophets of the world. It's not a missionary religion in the ordinary sense. It has absorbed many tribes through evolutionary, imperceptible character, and it tells each person to worship God according to their own faith or dharma.
And he writes about Christ. Yogananda records this. Gandhi has written, I am sure that if Jesus were living here now, he would bless the lives of many who have perhaps never heard his name. just as Scripture says, "Not everyone who says, 'Lord, Lord,' but he who does the will of my Father." Jesus gave humanity a magnificent purpose and single objective toward which we ought to aspire. I believe Jesus belongs not solely to Christianity, but to the entire world.
So this is Gandhi's radical inclusivity. He's a Hindu nationalist, but his nationalism is as broad as the universe. It includes all nations, and he doesn't want India to rise on the ashes of other nations or exploit any human being. He wants India to be strong so she can infect other nations with her strength.
And then the chapter shifts. On his last evening in Wardha, Yogananda addresses a meeting in the town hall. About 400 people assembled to hear him speak about yoga. He speaks first in Hindi, then in English. And it connects back to what we saw in the chapter on Therese Newman. Yogananda is a bridge between the teachings of East and West. He's showing that the science of yoga, the understanding of consciousness, these are universal.
And the next morning, before dawn, Yogananda rises at 5 o'clock. Village life is stirring. Bullock carts, peasants with burdens on their heads. After breakfast, they seek out Gandhi for farewell. The saint rises at 4 o'clock for his morning prayer, and Yogananda kneels to touch his feet. India is safe in your keeping, he says.
And then the chapter takes this beautiful turn. Yogananda's writing this after the fact. Years have passed. The earth and oceans and skies have darkened with world war, and he's reflecting on what Gandhi has offered. Alone among great leaders, Gandhi has offered a practical, nonviolent alternative to armed might.
And the book goes deep into Gandhi's philosophy at this point, his doctrine, because this is the teaching that connects to Kriya Yoga. Yoga isn't just about personal enlightenment. It's about the recognition that consciousness is fundamental, and that when you live from that recognition, your actions in the world transform.
Gandhi says, "I have found that life persists in the midst of destruction. Therefore, there must be a higher law than that of destruction. Only under that law would well-ordered society be intelligible and life worth living. And that's the law of love." He's applied the law of love with scientific precision.
And Yogananda reflects on the Satyagraha movement, the thousands of true Satyagrahis who took those 11 vows, who spread the message through patient education, who armed their people with nonviolent weapons, non-cooperation with injustice, the willingness to endure indignities and prison and death rather than resort to arms. By enlisting world sympathy through examples of heroic martyrdom, Gandhi has portrayed the practical nature of nonviolence.
And there's this striking observation. Gandhi has won through nonviolent means more political concessions for his land than have ever been won by any leader except through bullets. Not just political change, social reform. He and his followers have removed long-standing feuds between Hindus and Muslims. Hundreds of thousands of Muslims look to Gandhi as their leader. The untouchables have found in him their fearless champion.
And then there's this moment where Yogananda talks about what one critic said to Gandhi. "Mahatmaji, you are an exceptional man. You must not expect the world to act as you do." And Gandhi's response is just, it cuts right through the excuse we all make.
He says, "It is curious how we delude ourselves, fancying that the body can be improved, but that it is impossible to evoke the hidden powers of the soul. I'm trying to show that the powers you see in me aren't extraordinary. They're latent in every person. Yes, I have immovable faith in God and an unconsumable passion for truth and love. But is that not what every person has latent in them?"
So that's the teaching. That's what this chapter is really about. Two spiritual leaders meeting. Gandhi, the man of action, working through nonviolence in the political and social sphere. Yogananda, the renunciate, working through yoga in the inner sphere. And they recognize each other. They initiate each other because they both understand consciousness is fundamental.
And the chapter ends by pointing to William Penn, the Quaker experiment in Pennsylvania. No forts, no soldiers, no militia, no arms. Amidst all the frontier wars and butcheries between settlers and Native Americans, the Quakers alone remained unmolested. Not one Quaker woman assaulted, not one child slain, because they held to the principle of nonviolence. It works. It's been proven historically.
And Yogananda makes this clear. The West shouldn't dismiss Gandhi's program as impractical dreaming, should first reflect on a definition of Satyagraha by the Master of Galilee. Ye have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, resist not evil. Turn to him the other cheek also.
That's Jesus teaching Satyagraha 2,000 years before Gandhi gave it a name, before he applied it systematically. So what Yogananda is saying is this teaching is universal. It appears in every tradition. When consciousness recognizes itself, it naturally expresses as love. And love applied with scientific precision and commitment is the most powerful force in the world.
So next time, we're back to the personal story, the farewell to the guru. Because Yogananda knows his time with Sri Yukteswar in the body is about to end. He doesn't know exactly when, but he knows it's coming. And chapter 45 is going to take us into that circle of loss and grace.
See you next time.